Jersey, and today we're going to do a live session. We're going to make some pretty neat things. So it's actually my daughter's first birthday in a couple of weeks, and I wanted to make something for her. And I came up with a little something, and I thought, well, maybe we can make this into a live stream. So I think that's what we're going to do today. So first, before we get started doing anything, let me show you what we're making. Okay, so we've got 4 animals right here, but I think it needs one more. And we're going to make a hedgehog. I think that's what we're going to do, and I think she'll like it. Although I think she would have preferred 25 red felt Elmos, but she's going to get some animals instead. So let me show you how I did that. But before we do any of that, let me give you a little bit of a backstory about how I came to do all of this. So right now I'm in a 1-car garage, and here's what it looks like when it's really clean. And for me, it's like the perfect space to unwind, to make things. I make a lot of money in here as well. I work for all the local sign companies, and I do things on Etsy and all over the place. I work with a lot of interesting clients, but sometimes you gotta make something for fun. That's kind of the project we're gonna do today. So even rewinding a little bit before that, 7 years ago, I was a web developer, and I wanted to get a little bit away from that. And so for me, this Glowforge and making things and being a maker, that was a career change. I know a lot of people might have a similar story. And so after I started doing this kind of stuff, I actually never looked back at web development. This is so much more fun. So let's go on and make something. Now, before I actually just start making it, let me show you how I came about this idea. So a lot of what you do when you're working with the Glowforge is you're gonna be experimenting with all kinds of things. So let me show you some of my most recent experiment, and I'll show you how experimenting helped me make these. So check this out. So something like this, for instance, this is a piece of acrylic that's been painted black and then photo engraved. This is awesome. I'm working with inlays. So basically cutting out little pieces of veneer and sticking them like puzzle pieces into there. I work with a ton of different materials. So this is craft text. This is kind of like paper, but also like leather. It can get wet. Working with metal, like there's brass, different kinds of wood, like yellow heart, slate, redwood, rock, and even denim. I think I've tried probably 100 different materials by now. Here's even more experiments with inlay. So this uses like wood and acrylic. This uses acrylic and acrylic. This is all wood. This is acrylic and epoxy. And anyways, my entire shop is just completely filled with experiments. So the last experiment I was working with, this is just a couple of days ago, is making your own laserable plywood. So I'll show you how we're gonna do that. I'm gonna get some veneer sheets right here. And I'm gonna use the overhead cam. It's a little bit easier to see, I think. So if we switch over to the overhead cam. And so, sorry guys, we'll see in a little bit. So these are veneer sheets. These are basically really thin sheets of wood, right? And they have all different species from all around the world. And so these are really, really fun to work with. I've done a lot of inlay work, but I wanted to make my own laserable plywood. And so what I did is, I'm gonna grab some right here. Over the last couple of days, I made all of these. Let me show you these. And then we're gonna make one just all by ourselves, and then we're gonna use this wood in order to make those animals. Let's check this out. So this is basically, this is white oak, and there's a small piece of MDF with another sheet of white oak, and you can add paper masking to it as well. So we have all these different species, like mahogany, and this is a burl. And this is actually dyed. This is like a white dyed wood. This is walnut, green dyed wood. This is purple heart, pine. I mean, there's so many. There's cherry. This is some kind of dyed black wood. And one of my favorites, this one here, is like Paduke. It's a beautiful piece. And then, to continue experimenting, you don't just have to settle just on wood. So check this out. I did so much of this, and this is so cool. So I'll show you an overhead cam. I also got different papers from all around the world. I don't know if you could see that texture, but I started making laserable plywood out of all kinds of interesting paper. And there's just like so many beautiful things that you can put on a piece of MDF and then laser cut. So, and then you could also, you don't have to do that. This is actually cardstock, which looks nice. Or maybe one more example. I get a little bit carried away. Is actually this one here is a thin piece of veneer glued to acrylic. So it's like wood and acrylic at the same time. And you get all kinds of materials. This is bookmark material. This is like book cover material right here. And this is like a really fancy metallic paper. But then of course you could also just paint the wood too. So that's a whole other live stream. So in any case, let me show you how I made the first piece of laserable plywood, and then we'll put it into the Glowforge, and we're going to start making this hedgehog. So the hedgehog that we're going to make looks a little something like this. So that's the hedgehog on the left. And what I did in Adobe Illustrator is I cut out each of the separate shapes, and then we just basically cut them out one at a time, and we put them together almost like a collage. And a collage is really simple. Everyone's made a collage before. This is no different than that. We're just taking little bits of cut pieces of wood and we're sticking them onto another, and then all of a sudden we have this thing that looks like an animal. So let me show you how I made my laserable plywood. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to bring up some plies over here. We're going to use some of this wood glue. This is specific for veneer, but it doesn't matter. Any like regular wood glue will work. We're going to use some brushes, a little bit of wax paper. I need 2 sheets of veneer, one for the front and one for the back. And you kind of want to use both sides, because if you just put veneer on one side of the wood, the veneer, your whole entire plywood might start to warp. So by putting 2, it sort of counterbalances that. And then I need a piece of MDF, and then we're going to sandwich that. So I'm making it sound more complicated than it is. So let me just show you how we do it. So I'm going to go to the overhead real quick. Okay. First thing I'm going to do, I am going to, whoops, wrong one. That's actually a different clip. I hit the button by accident. All right, so I'm going to take a piece of wood, and I'm just going to put some wood glue on there. Now, this is my workbench. It doesn't matter if it gets a little bit of wood glue on there. So I'm just going to put it on like that. And we're going to smear it on real good. It doesn't have to be thick, but you do want to cover the whole thing. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now I'm just going to place a piece of veneer right on the top, just like that. Then I'm going to take a piece of wax paper, and you'll see why I'm going to do this later, and just a backer board. This is for later when we clamp it. And I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to switch camera angles a little bit so you can see what we're doing. Again, we're just going to smear that really good. So pretty simple. All right. That looks good. Pop the other guy on. Get the sheet of wax paper. The wax paper prevents glue from sticking to anything. It's like a protective barrier, essentially. Then we're going to add this thing here. Now what we have to do, we have to clamp this. So I'm just going to use some of these clamps right here. And I'm just going to use a few of these. Now, quite frankly, a lot of times when I'm making wood veneer handles, I use a vacuum bag. And it's not necessary, but it makes me seem like I'm extra fancy. But we'll do this low budget for the screen. And then what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to let this sit for about at least 2 hours, but I usually just let it sit overnight. And then when I take the clamps off, we're going to have something that looks a lot like this sheet here. And this is what we're going to use in order to make the back of the hedgehog. So that's really cool. And what we're going to do before we cut it, it's just like any other proof grade material. I'm going to apply some paper masking to it. So I'm going to peel out some right here. And I'm going to take a scissor. And the proper way to apply masking to something, it doesn't have to be super clean, but I won't need the whole sheet. I'm going to use this applicator, and I'm just going to rub that in real good so it doesn't come up while it's lasering. That's pretty good for the front. And then we're going to do the same thing for the back. Now I should mention, I also give this a quick sanding and I sprayed it down with some shellac, but that's not a necessary step. That's only if you want to protect it. Awesome. Now I have a perfectly usable piece of laserable plywood. So that's pretty simple. By the way, I can't see the comments yet. When I'm all finished, probably in just 5 or 6 minutes, I'll go check out the live comments and answer any questions you might have. But we have this great piece of plywood that we can actually use now. And so now what we're going to do, looking again at that hedgehog clip, I'm going to cut out the piece in the middle, the big jaggy. I guess that's like the back of it. So these animals are pretty layered. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put that piece into the Glowforge. And to speed time up, I actually just filmed one clip of me cutting out the back, and then we'll do a live cut of the second piece. So basically, I'm going to put that inside the Glowforge. I'm going to bring in that shape into the Glowforge app. It's really simple. Hit the button, and you're going to see something a little bit like this. So hit the button, and here it goes. So if you've never seen a laser before, it really is one of the coolest things to see. It literally is, it's like magic to see this thing cut out. So you'll see it in 1 second. The close-up. And it's because we're only doing cutting operations, you can actually cut out one of these animals in, quite frankly, just a few minutes. Like, it doesn't take very long at all. So I was surprised this whole hedgehog probably shouldn't take more than 10 minutes to cut out the entire animal. And then we have to assemble it, which again is not going to take very long. So that's super cool. So let's see what that looks like. All right. So there it is. It has that paper, that protective masking on there. And what that does, so that when we peel this up, any burn marks that might have appeared on the wood will get left onto the paper instead. So let's peel this up real quick. Oh, that looks great. I'm also going to peel the other back off, but I'll just do it now. Let's not be lazy. Let's just do it now. It only takes a second. Awesome. So this paper masking sticks to my shoes every day. Anybody who has a Glowforge knows this stuff just sticks to you all the time. It's great. So we have the back, right? Let's take another look at that hedgehog. So I think the next piece we're going to do, it's the stomach part. It's the other part. We're going to do this one a little bit differently. So I think what we're going to do is I already made a piece of, this looks like maple. We have the maple plywood here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to apply some 3M tape to it. So I don't have to use any glue. I can just attach the tape to this piece, cut it out with the tape and the masking on it, and then just stick it onto the back of the hedgehog. And this way it's a more even coverage of glue and there's no mess. We're gonna glue little pieces on later, but this is another trick that I learned just from experimenting. So let me switch to the overhead camera and let me show you how I would process something like this. Okay, we have that. And then my piece of tape, here we go. Okay, so I am going to cut a piece of tape the same size as my piece that I'm using. So I'm just gonna use a knife. And it doesn't have to be exact. Great. And now what we're going to do, we're just going to peel one side of this tape. Which is easier said than done today. All right. And we are going to apply it to our piece. And then using an applicator, just like we did before, we're going to apply it to the plywood. Now this makes it, as soon as you apply pressure, this is never coming off. I actually have a video on my YouTube channel of every way you can possibly use 3M tape. And we've actually used this stuff to hold up like cinder blocks. It's insane. Now for the other side, because I'm laser cutting it, I don't want to have to sand it or do anything special. I am going to apply a little bit of masking to it. All right. Do that the same way. And let me just clean up the edges a little bit. All right. Maybe this one too. Perfect. Okay, so now we have something, we have a piece of plywood that's been taped and it's been masked. So now I'm going to put this in the Glowforge and I'm going to cut out that other piece. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go into the Glowforge app. There we go. And I already cut out this. I'm going to delete that. I really just want this piece. That's the piece I want. And the settings, well, this is a lot like any other proof grade material. So I'm just going to say it's medium maple plywood. And that should probably work. And I'm going to set this to cut. And I think that's good. So I'm going to go ahead and hit print. And let's see how long this cut's going to take. So right now it's auto-focusing. And we'll know within just a little bit how long it's going to take. I can't imagine it's going to take more than a minute, probably less. We'll see. "33 seconds, awesome. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on that in just 1 second. All right, Glowforge camera. So that's cutting nicely, yeah. All right, good, good. Let me take it out of the machine, and then we're going to put it on the back of the hedgehog. So this part's pretty simple. All right. So we got our tape in the back, so it cuts right through there. And then I'm going to peel off the, actually I'm going to peel off both sides. I'm going to peel off the front. Looks good. And what we're going to do is I'm going to peel off this tape in the back, and I'm just going to apply it on there, and I don't need any glue. So that's the next step. Go to the overhead for that. All right. Peel that up. And real quick, let me just look at my reference image real quick because that's where it is. So it overhangs at the bottom a little bit. Okay, that works. Done. It's on there forever. Okay, last little bits. I already have the eyes and the nose. I did 3 of them just as backup. I didn't need to do that, but they're all here. So we have the eyes and nose, and for these also have double-sided tape. What I did here is actually, this is another really cool trick. So I showed you that veneer before, those sheets of veneer. right in the beginning, I basically just applied the 3M tape to this as well, and I made a number of veneer sheets. So you can see I did all the eyes and noses for all the other ones. And so in your Glowforge settings, you would just use like a proof grade veneer setting, and it will cut through this really fine. So I wanted the animals to be layered, so that's why I did it that way. So let me look at that reference picture real quick, and we're going to put on the eyes and the nose. So here's the reference picture. They go right up there. Okay, let's do that now. And again, if anybody's coming in halfway through the stream, we're basically making another friend for these guys right here. These are for my daughter. Okay, so I'm going to take an eyeball. So in this case, it might have been easier to glue it, but it's okay. Pop that guy in there like that. Nice thing about the 3M tape, you can position it, and it's not going to stick until you press it. I think that looks pretty good. I'll take a second eyeball. Nice, and then the nose. And then finally, one last piece. So we have all of the, we have ears and his little arms and his little legs. So I cut these out of, I'll show you these, but I cut these out of, this is, I guess, mahogany plywood that we made. And for that one, I'm just gonna use a dot of super glue because this works fine. You could also use like CA glue or, I mean, there's a ton of adhesive. That's a whole other live stream. If you want an entire live stream on adhesives, let me know, I'll be happy to do that. If Glowforge lets me do it. But I would be happy to talk to you about it, so feel free to reach out to me. So I'm gonna glue these guys on. Look at my reference picture one last time. Okay, that doesn't seem too hard. I can remember that. So now let's finish this project up. So a little dab of super glue. Make sure we'll do a dry fit first, just to make sure it goes in the right spot. You don't need very much super glue at all. That looks good. And then we'll put on his arms. Another arm. And then lastly, I'm going to put on some legs. I'm just going to put it at the top of the leg here so that we can let it hang down a little bit. And we're going to let this set for just a few minutes before I handle it. And then it should be good to go. Wow, so there he is. Awesome. So he's he's done. He's done. So now he can hang out with all of his friends. Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. I think that's it. That reminded me of like a Mr. Crafty Pants 15-minute challenge. Although his are much better than that 15-minute challenge. But anyhow, I'm gonna hop onto the stream right now and answer any questions if there's time left over. Thank you. All right. Awesome. Cool. All right, I'm on the stream. Cool. I think that's it. That reminded me of like a Mr. Crafty Pants 15-minute challenge. I'm sorry, I'm reading. His are much better than wow, I got some names on here I recognize. But, anyhow, I'm gonna hop onto wow, a lot of names I know. Wow, the great. Stream right now and answer. I gotta lower my volume a little bit because I'm hearing myself. Is there any questions? I think Bailey's in the chat today. Oh, where can we find thin veneer, wood veneer? Where can you find wood veneer? I have a local lumber yard near me. I've gotten it there. I go on Amazon. I buy a lot from Etsy. You could also buy proof grade veneer just on the Glowforge website. That's actually easier because it already comes with the paper masking and the tape and everything already on it. So that's pretty cool. Yep. Oh, Yvette. Oh, Yvette's one of my favorite people. I've learned so much from her. Are you going to attach the animals to sticks and use them in the baby's cake? That is the coolest idea. I love that. I love that. Oh, what kind of 3M tape was that? So there's actually 3 types. I have a whole video about that in my YouTube channel. I also have a Glowforge course called glowforgeforbeginners.com where we talk about that kind of stuff. But I'm using 468 MP, and that's good for most things. Or you can also use 467 MP. That's just a thinner version of that. Or if you need something that's super strength, you can use like 300 LSE. And but for most things, it almost doesn't matter. Let's see. I'm looking at, scrolling up to the comments. Oh, cool. I also should say that when you're making your own, if you're making your own custom laserable plywood, or you can use MDF because it's more stable, but you can also use like regular like Baltic birch plywood or pretty much a whole lot of different kinds of materials. I was using 16th inch MDF when making the plywood for today because the veneers I have are pretty thick. But if you find thinner veneers like what they have on the proof grade, which are so much nicer, then you can get away with using 8th inch. Cool. All right. Another question. Cool. And I've had my Glowforge, I had my first one when Glowforge first came out. I was a part of the original campaign, so I had a machine when they first came out, and it was awesome. I now have 2 of them, and it's great. So excellent. Well, I think we're gonna wrap this up. I don't see any other questions. This was a ton of fun. I had a blast. We should do this every week. This is great. This is awesome. Thank you guys very much. I really, really appreciate it. All right. Take care.